Welcome back. Today we are talking about the mechanical HVAC and refrigeration PE exam. If you clicked on this video, you are either one, somebody who's thinking about taking this exam sometime in the future, or number two, you're somebody who's committed to taking this PE exam. Maybe you already even signed up. Or number three, you're somebody who has taken it in the past, unfortunately failed it, and has to retake it. In any case, I hope that this video is helpful in giving you insights into my experience in taking the HVAC and refrigeration PE exam. In fact, we have a deck here of 15 cards. Hopefully, once we get through these 15 cards, you will feel like you have a better picture and more confidence in approaching this mechanical HVAC and refrigeration PE exam. My name is Alpha Sala. I am a mechanical engineer turned fire life safety engineer, and I have had the good fortune of having passed both the mechanical HVAC PE exam further back, and then more recently taking and passing the fire protection PE exam. So I hope that having gone through that exam twice, which was very fun to say the least, I can actually share some insights that can help you in your process. And this is just from my own personal experience, just in hopes that it helps you out and that you do feel better going into this exam. Looking at the big picture of the PE exam, the PE exam is one of the many steps within the journey to become a licensed professional engineer. And you can say that it is probably the most well-known and probably the most important step in that process. So I won't really go through the full process of the licensure itself. This is something that you can actually get with NCEES about, or talk with your state board if you're in the United States, or if you're taking it internationally, you can talk with your the council of your country that deals with these exams, and you can go through that full process and get the logistics on that front. I won't bog you down in this video with that. What I'm trying to do in this video is just give my honest, firsthand personal experience, and you can take that into your studies, and hopefully it's helpful. Becoming a licensed professional engineer is one of the most respected and authoritative credentials in the field of building design and construction. So it is natural that you feel apprehensive. It is a big step in your career. If it's something you're taking in the near future, you're probably thinking about it. It's probably on the top of your mind all the time. And if it's something distant, at least you are thinking and working up to it. Just know that the journey is long and it is a bit stressful, but it is worth it. Becoming a licensed PE is something that just opens up doors for your career. It's certainly opened up doors in my career. Many of my colleagues who have also become licensed professional engineers have explained that they've opened up career opportunities, new job opportunities. They've opened up roles that they were just currently locked out of without having that professional license. So this is something that you should be nervous about. It makes sense, but you should be excited that once you do reach that goal, it is something that is worth it. Before getting into these cards, if you want a kind of written version of this video, you can check out my website at noonfireblog.com, where I have an actual article written on the content that I'm covering in this video, and you can check out my other articles as well over there. So let's get into these 15 steps. Step one is to apply and meet the prerequisites. The prerequisites typically consist of having educational requirements met, having passed the FE exam, as well as a certain number of years of work experience that is verified and validated and actually submitted to NCEES and or the state board through which you're applying. For me personally, my first PE exam was, again, the mechanical and HVAC exam, and I applied and took it through the state of Maryland. And they required a accredited degree as well as 4 years of work experience. If you have a master's degree, I believe that counts as one year of work experience. and they also required that I had passed the FE exam. Every state and every country is different and has their own nuances. So definitely go and call NCEES or call your state board and get that information so you're very clear as to what you need to do in your case. Usually the people at the state board are very communicative, as well as NCEES. I've called both of them many times on multiple occasions. They're very helpful, and they can give you very personalized and specific directions and answer any of your questions. So once you meet those prerequisites, you actually should apply, and I recommend applying early. And the HVAC PE exam is offered year-round. So this is good and bad. It's good in the sense that you can really kind of make it more flexible to your life and your schedule. It's bad in the sense that it kind of gives you an open-ended timeline. For the fire protection PE exam, for example, it was offered only one time in the year, which was in April. So you had to be ready for the exam in April. You couldn't really massage the dates and procrastinate. It's like you're either gonna take it this year in April, or you're gonna have to wait till next year in April. Whereas with the mechanical HVAC PE exam, you do have a little bit more flexibility, so it's on you to hold yourself accountable, to really pick a date. And I recommend actually, as soon as you're able to sign up, before you even start studying, just sign up. Pick a day that's about 6 months out and just sign up and just say, this is my day, no matter what. I'm not gonna change it for anything. Unless something very crazy in your life happens, of course, we empathize with that. But I urge you to pick a date as early as possible, sign up for it, commit to it, and that will really be the motivator to make sure you stay on track with your studying. Moving on to step number 2. To learn and understand the exam format. The best place to get this information is on the NCEES website, and they have an examinee guide as well as the exam spec. So it's 2 separate documents. In those 2 documents, you'll get almost anything you could ask about the specifics of the exam. The examinee guide itself will give you the way that the testing is done, different things about breaks and scheduling, cancellations, refunds, and all of that. Whereas the exam specs document will give you, for your specific exam, what is the exact breakdown of the types of questions, what are the categories of subjects that are going to be on your exam, as well as things like how many questions should you expect to see per category. So these 2 documents really is something you should get familiar with, and you should have a very clear picture of what the exam entails before you start studying. Just to summarize some of the key points from those 2 documents, the total exam time for the HVAC and refrigeration exam is 8 hours of active exam. So the total testing process is about 9 to 9.5 hours, but the active testing is 8 hours. You'll get 2 4-hour sessions back to back, and then you'll have a 50-minute break in between those 2 sessions. The total number of questions is 80, and if you do the math, it's about 6 minutes per question. And that 6 minutes per question is something you should keep in the back of your mind. This will help you as you're going throughout the exam. You kind of know where you're at. You get an internal clock for your pacing to make sure that you finish the exam in time. Now, to get into the breakdown of the domains covered on this exam, there are 4 total domains or 4 total subjects covered on this exam. Number 1 is HVAC loads and psychrometrics. This is about 18 through 27 total questions of the 80, which is about 22 to 34% of the exam. Domain number 2 is HVAC and refrigeration distribution and systems. This is 20 to 30 total questions of the 80, which is about 25% to 38, 37% of the exam. Domain number 3 is HVAC equipment and components. This is 24 to 36 total questions, which is about 30% to 45% of the questions. And last is supportive knowledge. And these are 8 to 12 questions, and they comprise about 10 to 15% of the exam. Each of those categories, they have their subcategories, and you can see more specifics on the exam specs document. Now, the next question, and the biggest question, is what score do I need to pass this exam? This, I have never seen a published number from NCEES on what is the pass percentage. I have heard kind of anecdotally that you should aim to get at least a 75% on the exam, to get at least 75% of the questions correct. I mean, you really are aiming to get 100%, but that's the number that I've heard from various courses and kind of through the grapevine. So don't really quote me on that number. You can do more research, ask instructors and things like that. But I've heard that 75% is a score you should aim for. Moving on to the statistics and the pass rate of the exam. This is different than the passing score. The pass rate is of the people who took it, what percentage of them passed the exam. So NCEES, luckily and thankfully, they publish the statistics for the pass rates for all exams, all PE exams. And what they do is they give like a 6-month sample, like what was the pass rate in the last 6 months. So as of the time of recording this video and at the very tail end of 2025, the most recent 6-month sample, they broke the test takers into 2 categories. Category number 1 was first-time test takers. Category number 2 is repeat test takers, so people who failed it and had to retake it. So first-time test takers, there was a total of 678 test takers, and those first-time takers, 75% of them passed it. With repeat takers, however, a total of 173 of them took it, and only 50% of them passed. So you can see that those first-time test takers, there's actually a pretty high pass rate of 75%. Whereas the repeat takers, you can see that they drop significantly in their pass percentage. For whatever reasons, I'm sure somebody can do an analysis as to why that is. But just know that the first-time test takers have a much higher pass percentage than the repeat takers. So hopefully you aim and you're in that 75% of the first-time takers passing it. Now, as you can see from the numbers of a pass rate of 75%, that is relatively high. And this is something that I emphasize, and I know that other engineers who have taken this exam emphasize, is that this exam is not aiming to check if you're an expert or if you're some super veteran in HVAC and refrigeration. It's really just checking if you are proficient. It's not checking expertise, it's checking proficiency. And that should ease the minds of many people. They often get a bit overwhelmed by just the big effort and the fact that they're only 4 years into the field. They feel like maybe they're still kind of getting their momentum in understanding the different systems that they're working with. But again, it's not aiming for expertise, it's aiming for proficiency. So keep that in mind. Now moving on to step number 3, which is to choose your study path. Do you want to buy an expensive course or do you want to self-study? This is a question that many engineers go through and have to figure out. I'm personally on the team of buying the course and following a course. Yes, they are expensive, but I feel that they are justified. I believe that for me personally, the way I learn and the way that I am most productive is when I have a very clear path with clear boundaries, clear modules, and a clear finish line. With self-study, I feel like I can kind of go down rabbit holes and I don't have that kind of course outline to bring me out of that rabbit hole and keep me on pace. I've heard many people say that just the fact that the course has all these modules that you know you have to finish, it actually forces you to study as efficiently as possible so that you can make sure you get to all the modules. Whereas with self-study, like I said, it can kind of get open-ended, and that's me personally. I feel that taking a course is better. I personally took the PPI HVAC and Refrigeration PE prep course, and it was offered as either a live course or on demand. They also had like a monthly option. I bought the on demand option for a 12-month access. It was about $2,000 or so at the time that I took it, so you can check the prices there. I thought it was decent and pretty good, and I know there are other HVAC prep courses out there. So it's not necessarily about which course you take. It's about you doing the research and due diligence to make sure that whichever course you pick is reputable, is something that's going to give you a lot of structured content as well as a lot of practice problems. Those are the two most important aspects of choosing a course. So with all the different options out there, just spend some time, do some research, look at the reviews, and hopefully you find one that suits you and that you feel confident in. Regarding the price of these courses, this is probably the main reason people opt for the self-study. They just think it's just too expensive. I personally felt it was justified for two reasons. One, I felt that it was a almost investment per hour. If I was paying $2,000, and let's say I plan to study about 250 hours, $2,000 divided by 250 hours is $8 an hour. So I was essentially asking myself, would I pay $8 an hour for a more streamlined and more crisp study schedule and study path? And I thought for myself it was justified. So you will have to decide that for yourself if you want to buy the course or if you want to go down the route of self-study. In any case, I would at least recommend buying a study guide or some type of structured curriculum, even if it's not an online course, that can help you down this journey, because the topics are many, you have a limited amount of time, and you really want to make sure you're being the most efficient with your time. So the second reason that I thought the course was justified for myself was I actually asked my company if they would reimburse the course. So I went to my manager and I said, hey, I'm getting ready to take the PE exam and I want to take this $2,000 course. Will the company pay for it or will they reimburse me for it? Is there any type of incentive program? And actually, I was the first one to take the PE exam in like a long time in my company. We're like a mid-sized company. So my head of office went to the CEO, they talked a little bit, and they actually said that, yes, we will pay and reimburse you for the course up to $1,400. So I ended up paying the difference of that $2,000 and $1,400. They chose that number, however, but I was very grateful to have had most of the course paid for by the company. The contingency was that I had to pass it first. I had to show that I passed the exam. Then they would reimburse the fee for the course up to $1,400. The other thing, I think they had a contingency of if you did pass it and receive that reimbursement, you had to work for the company for another year at least. Otherwise, you would have to return that $1,400. So for me, definitely it was worth it. And I'm very glad that I did that. And luckily I passed the first time, so I got reimbursed that $1,400. So long story short, make sure you, before paying out of pocket and just walking away, or just giving up on even buying a course altogether, go to your manager, go to your head of office, and ask them first, does the company have a policy already in place? If they don't, even then still push, like I did in my case, and ask. And you never know. You can only ask. The worst thing they can say is no, and you're back to square one anyways. Moving on to step number 4, which is to buy 2 NCEES approved calculators. I actually have my own calculators, the same 2 that I used on the exam way back on both the mechanical exam as well as the fire protection PE exam. So I had the same 2 this whole time. And The reason why you buy two is that, first of all, you use this calculator throughout your whole studying, because if this is the one you're going to use on the exam, you want to make sure you're familiar with the different functions and you are not trying to figure things out on the day of the exam with the calculator. A lot of problems you will require a calculator, even if it's for simple algebra or just doing a multiplication of decimals, or using one of the equations from the handbook. You will definitely use your calculator often. So use it during your study, and that should help you significantly. So the reason for the second one is that on the day of the exam, I would say one of the worst things that can happen is you are mid-exam and something malfunctions with your calculator. Maybe a battery dies, maybe one of the buttons stops working, or whatever else happens, and you are now crippled for that exam and for the remainder of that exam because you don't have a backup. So what I did is I kept one in my locker on exam day, and I brought one in with me, and I made sure they were identical so that if something were to happen to the first one, I have one that I'm already familiar with that is identical, and I can just keep on moving. So definitely I would recommend buying two calculators. These are something like $15 or something like that. So with all the time and effort, just spend another $15 and make sure that you do not sabotage your exam day. I would also recommend this calculator, which is the Casio FX115ES Plus. And the reason being, this calculator, and I mentioned on my last video, I never thought I would have a opinion on calculators, but I just thought that this was very helpful because the main function that I found beneficial is that this actually types in formulas in the way that you would read it or write it on a piece of paper. So it would, for example, put the fractions on the top and bottom and put the line in between, put the exponents in small numbers above. And that really helps when you are looking at an equation from the reference manual, or you're solving an equation and you want to make sure that your input matches the equation on the reference manual. This I thought was so invaluable. It's something I didn't expect would be so important, but I thought that was very important for me. So if, for example, if I just type here 6 squared divided by 3.6 to the power of 6. So I'll see if you guys can see this here. So you can see that the fraction actually shows, the exponent actually shows, even if I came and did a plus sign on the side here, plus 8.3, you can see it actually shows it in a very intuitive way. So for me, I like this calculator. I don't have any affiliate links for it, so it's not endorsed. I just personally liked it. Moving on to step number 5. Let me move my calculators out of here. Step number 5 is to download the NCEES reference manual. Remember, we're now still pre-studying, so you haven't necessarily started studying yet. You've picked your course, if you're going to do a course, or at least bought a study guide. You've then gotten your calculators. You're now getting your materials. The last material you need to get, which is the single most important, is the NCEES reference manual. And this reference manual is new to the computer-based testing and the computer-based exams that have started recently in the last few years. And it used to be that you actually brought in a bunch of different textbooks and review books, and you could have binders and papers, and you brought it all to the exam and you could use it as you see fit. Now, none of that is allowed. You are not allowed to walk into the exam room with anything but yourself, your calculator, and I don't even think they give you pencil and paper. I think they actually give you markers and like this kind of laminated paper. So, and actually that you turn in at the end of the exam. So the only reference and the only resource you have on the exam is this digital NCEES reference manual. Each discipline has their own reference manual. You can actually see behind me here, we have the mechanical PE reference handbook. So this is the only thing you have on the day of the exam. And let's see if I can actually scroll down and just see how that looks here. So as you can see, it's just a PDF, and it essentially is about like 300 pages or so. Actually more, almost 600 pages. And it goes through each of the different domains, and it has all of the equations you will need on the exam. So this reference manual or reference handbook is something that should be used every single study session. It is the document you should get very familiar with. Again, it has all the different equations, all different tables, charts, graphs, reference values, properties of air, anything you can think of should be in this reference manual. So you will actually get this as a PDF on the exam. And when you get into the exam room, again, it's computer-based, you will get instructions on how to actually access this during your exam. So again, you'll have it as a PDF. You will be able to use the Control F function. So you should use this while you're studying, and the way you'll be able to use it on the exam. One is to make sure you're familiar with the table of contents and know the order of the chapters, as well as know what type of keywords to do in the Control F function, and that will help you on the exam in answering questions more quickly and not wasting valuable time. So I'll go back to the cover page here. This reference manual actually, something that I did for the fire protection PE exam, which I wish I did for this exam, is I read this reference manual like a book. I just basically read it and just kind of put my eyes on every single page and kind of just made mental notes. Okay, this equation is over here next to this table. Oh, I remember thermodynamics or things to do with this type of calculation is in this section. Oh, that equation is past this graph over here. And you'll find that actually a lot of equations that you use on practice problems and during your studying will be repeat equations. So those types of equations, you definitely need to be very familiar as to where they are in this reference manual, because you're not going to memorize the equations. You're not going to memorize any values, and I don't recommend doing so. I recommend just getting familiar with this to the point that it's like your second brain, that you're able to kind of get in there and you see a problem and you kind of already have an inclination as to where to go, which chapter it's in. And if not, you can at least use the Control F and you know which keywords to look for. Moving on to step number 6. Treat the lectures as entry points, but then prioritize self-study and practice. So what I mean by this here, lectures versus self-study, is if you choose to take a course, like I took the PPI course, and whichever course you take will most likely have videos by an instructor, either pre-recorded or live. And usually even the live, they record it so you can even access it later. One pitfall that I did on my first PE exam, the HVAC, was I relied so much on those lectures. Like I would watch it and then I would rewatch it. And I almost had this impression that like this lecture is the scope and kind of this will give me everything I need for the exam. And I really put it on a pedestal in terms of my prioritization. What I learned is that the lectures are just entry points. They're just introductions into the topics. But what is most beneficial is taking the, for example, recommended readings or whatever topic they're talking about and getting into the actual written handbook or study guide that is provided with the course or that you purchase separately, and looking and reading and really digesting it at your own pace in a self-study fashion. So that really forces you to not just kind of passively listen. It forces you to really go from step to step and make sure you understand at your own pace what the topic is talking about and how to approach problems with it, and really make sure you're understanding the concepts. So for me, like I said, prioritize, after you watch the lecture just once, prioritize self-study. Don't go and rewatch lectures. With regards to self-study, this was another mistake I made in my first PE exam that I very much corrected on the second PE exam, the second being the fire protection. I did not practice enough in the early stages, especially for the first exam. So what I would do is I would watch the lectures, like I said, maybe multiple times, and then I would also read and just understand and just read and make sure I get the concepts, but I wouldn't do much practice. And if I did do practice, because the courses came with little quizzes and things like that, I wouldn't practice under the constraints that I would expect in the exam. So I didn't practice under time constraints, and I didn't practice under the constraint of only having the reference manual to look at. So actually what happened was, when the last 4 weeks or so came before my HVAC and refrigeration PE exam, is when I really started doing timed practice exams. And I kind of had like a shell shock of like just the process of doing the problems themselves under that time constraint and under the constraint of just having the handbook. And it really was a shock. And I kind of panicked the last month or so because I felt like, oh man, I don't think I'm ready. But luckily I kept doing more practice. I kind of really just dropped everything and did practice for that last 4 weeks. And I did then feel that I was ready. I recommend, as you go through your full study path and your full study journey, that you periodically do under pressure practice problems, under the pressure of time and under the pressure of only having this reference manual and your calculator. Doing that throughout your study session will really get you into the rhythm and build the muscle of completing problems under pressure. Because one thing I've always heard from people who did not pass is that they felt that the time constraint was a big issue for them. It is something that they weren't really, it kind of shell shocked them. So if you give yourselves like mini boot camps and mini exams, maybe take 10 problems, you know that each problem is about 6 minutes. Therefore, for that 10 question batch, you can give yourself 1 hour. Everyone can kind of carve out an hour on the weekend or something like that each week. Just say, I'm going to do these 10 questions, put a timer for 60 minutes, and do it with only access to this and with your calculator, and see how you do under that pressure. If you do that every week leading up to your exam, you would have done many reps, and your time constraint muscles will have been built, and you will be able to handle that pressure on the exam. Step number 7 is to study all exam topics. I mentioned this before on my video on the fire protection PE exam. With the PE exam, you should study all topics. It is not something like the FE exam where you can just study core topics or topics that are the main subjects and then ignore kind of the side subjects. The FE exam is not an issue. You can do that. This exam, I would not recommend it. I do feel that it is hard to hide a weakness on this exam. This is something that was reiterated for the fire protection PE exam, and I feel it does apply also to the HVAC PE exam. And I have a feeling it applies to more PE exams. I've just taken those 2 to have that experience, but study all topics. Don't skip topics. And what you'll find is that luckily, like I said, you only have 6 minutes per question. They cannot really go that in depth into certain nuances and all these different things and different details. Therefore, most of the questions are very surface level. So as long as you have the breadth of the various topics at a surface level, you will most likely be comfortable with answering that question. So don't think that, oh man, I have to become an expert in every single item on that subject list. Just know that you have to be proficient and just get a general understanding of it, and you will most likely be able to get those points. And you never know, those may be the points that make or break and be the difference between passing and failing. So please study every exam topic. Step number 8, stick to a long-term and consistent study schedule. Do not cram and do not procrastinate. It is a lot of content. It is a long marathon. So the more consistency and gradual spacing that you give yourself, the better off you'll be. I personally studied for about 8 months. I would say, though, I really got more serious at like the 4-month mark, but my total study session and study journey was about 8 months. And I probably logged about 250 hours of studying. I've seen some people say that they go as low as 150 to 200. Some people say as much as 300. So you can kind of be in that range. I personally would estimate about 250 hours is what I logged. It was about 8 to 12 hours per week, depending on the schedule and how close I was to the exam and what was going on at work and things like that. But I tried to do about 8 to 12 hours a week. I personally use Pomodoro sessions. If you don't know what those are, it's essentially where you put on a timer and you focus for 25 minutes. As soon as that 25-minute timer goes off, you now can take a break, and that break is 5 minutes. You set a timer for 5 minutes. Once that 5-minute break is over, you get back, you lock in, you're laser focused for that 25 minutes, and then you back off again and you take another 5-minute break. And you keep doing that on and off, and it works as a type of mental reset. One of the things that people do sometimes is they just kind of drudge and kind of just pound through a 4-hour study session with no breaks, maybe getting a couple sips of water or something like that. But after about 25, 30 minutes to maybe an hour, like, you need a break. Your brain needs to reset. I personally, that's the way I work. Maybe others have longer endurance than I do. But for me, after that 25 minutes, 30-minute mark, I kind of need a reset. So Pomodoro sessions really help with that. They also help because it makes sure that within those 25-minute sessions, you don't have your phone on, you don't have any distractions. Any text that comes in, hopefully you can even turn off your phone or put it on airplane mode. But any other notification or anything that comes in, you say, nope, it's going to be during my 5-minute break. So it doesn't delay it indefinitely till after your full study session, but it at least keeps it out of those focus times. The next thing to help maintain a long-term and consistent schedule is to negotiate with the people in your household, whether that be family members or roommates or spouse, or your spouse or your children. You'll have to communicate with them that I kind of need this set schedule. So if you need me or if there's something that needs to be done in the house, let's make sure it's outside of this schedule. You'll negotiate. Maybe they'll need to take some of your blocks every now and then, but maybe you'll be able to make that up another time. The main thing is just about communication and making sure that you are communicating that you need certain times of the day and of the week that you are dedicating to studying. And hopefully they respect that. And they should if you communicate that early and clearly and respectfully. For me, my sacred time was before work, and it worked out very well because I actually was leaving to go to the office. So I would just go about 2 hours earlier, and I would go and study before work. And it kind of gets me out of the house. It's within the same motion of going to work. It's not really taking much. That worked for me, doing it in the mornings. Some people are night owls. Some people will only do it on the weekends. So you'll have to see what works with your schedule and what works with your study habits. Step number 9 is to adopt a career applicability mindset. This is actually one of my favorite tips in that I've heard many engineers that I've worked with, and I also experienced this, say that studying for the PE exam is enjoyable, actually. You do feel that you are learning things that are very relevant to your field and to the things you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you're actually growing in your ability to perform on projects, to meet deadlines, to speak better in and more precise and more technically with your team and with clients. So I personally enjoyed studying for it. And I always thought to myself, this thing that I'm studying for, maybe somebody will ask me about this on a staff meeting or in a project coordination meeting, or maybe it'll come up on one of my projects. I always kept that in the back of my mind, that this is something that I'll actually use and that I'll actually have to be responsible for down the line. So I kept that always in the back of my mind. I think one of the challenges of us, you can say office engineers, is that we have the curse of the paper and of the computer, in that we do designs of HVAC systems, of various building systems, and vast majority of our relationship with that is on paper or on the computer. That makes it a bit more abstract in our minds, and it doesn't feel as tangible. That's why I always recommend to younger engineers, and I always love going myself, is to go on site visits. I actually have here just from Amazon, like a $30 volume control damper. And essentially just to touch it, just to feel it, just to know that what I'm putting on paper is a real thing. Like just to know, okay, this lever over here that just shows as a little tick mark when I draw my volume damper on my plans in Revit or AutoCAD. No, this is actually something that somebody needs to turn, that somebody needs to get their hand in and be able to access and be able to service. So that's one thing here. I also have here like a mini centrifugal fan. This is it looks like it's for like a refrigerator or something. Again, from Amazon, like $15. Another way to get these types of things is to reach out to manufacturer reps for dampers and for various materials, and just ask them to send you a sample for your office. Like they send a bunch of stuff anyways, so ask them, hey, can we have a sample of your product? We just want to touch it and feel it in the office. So here I have like a centrifugal fan. Maybe you can see it better here. Like just to have an understanding, like how is the airflow actually moving through this? And just to get I'm a visual person, so just to get a better physical idea, the last thing I have here is a fusible link for a fire damper. So these are the things that upon being heated to a certain degree, they'll melt. And then if you imagine that my hands are springs, as soon as it melts, the springs release and then the damper closes. So just to see it, just to touch it, to feel it, to know actually it's not as brittle as I thought. Every time I would design these, I would think and look at them on pictures, I would think that they were very brittle and that like contractors could easily break them. But all of this just to say that we should adopt a career applicability mindset, as well as a mindset that the things that we are doing are real and tangible. So these are just some examples of that. I'll take this out of here. All right, moving on to step number 10. Practice, practice, practice in the final weeks before the exam. The best form of studying, in my opinion, is just the practice problems. I honestly think that the more practice problems you do, the better. Like, you can't go overboard on practice problems. So in the final weeks before the exam, let's say 6 to 8 weeks out, just don't try to catch up on all the lectures, as I mentioned before. Don't try to catch up on all the supplemental readings. I would just recommend, if you're in crunch time, that last stretch, that the fourth quarter, just do practice problems. And this is something that I also could have done better for the HVAC PE exam, again, which I corrected and did much better for the fire protection PE exam, is that I waited until the last 2 weeks or so to do the NCEES practice exam. So the NCEES actually has, for every discipline, an official practice exam. So you can buy it as a PDF. It's like $45 or something like that. I waited till like the last 2 weeks for the first exam. And then what happened was, not that it was a bad thing, it's just that I realized how, like, as I'm going through the exam and then after doing the exam, doing and checking my answers, I realized how much I learned. And actually, once I was on the exam, a lot of the types of questions I saw on the practice exam, I actually saw on the exam. So I felt like that was like the most beneficial 4 hours. I did it in 4-hour chunks, 4 and 4 on a Saturday and Sunday. Those 8 hours of taking that practice exam under time constraint with the reference manual only really was like the most valuable, the most high yield 8 hours of my entire 250 study hours. So I would recommend that you take this exam earlier, maybe 6 or 8 weeks out. Therefore, you can reap the benefits, and then also have that in the back of your mind that over these last 8 weeks, now that I've taken the exam, I have a feel for the types of questions, the way the questions are going to be asked, and I can really maximize the way I study and the way I think about subjects that come across in the last 8 weeks or last 6 weeks or so. All right, step number 11. So at this point, you're essentially done studying. Maybe it's the last 3 to 4 days or last week or so before the exam. In this case, and at this time, the most important thing is to prepare your body and prepare your mind to take the exam. I've heard many people say, and I also agree, it's not the most important in the last couple of days to just try to cram more information into your brain. You've been studying for a long 6 months, 8 months, 4 months, and you are now, in the next couple of days, you're now going to go into an exam room, stare at a screen for a full straight 8 hours to 9 hours, and you need to be fresh for that. So I recommend kind of taking it easier on the studying in the last few days, the last 3 to 4 days or so, and preparing your body physically. The best physical thing you can do for your body, as you guessed, is sleep. As we know now from all these various studies, you don't just make up sleep in one night. So it's not just like the night before, I'm just going to get good sleep and that's going to be good. Sleep debt is a thing that accrues over a long period of time. So if at least that last week or so you can start getting consistent sleep, that will really, you'll see your mind much sharper, your body has more energy. And there's a secret as well. You will likely not sleep very well the night before the exam. This is typical of any big event, I used to play a lot of sports, any sports game, any major sports game, any major competition. The nerves get to you. They kind of keep you up at night. It may be that one night that you just, for some reason, don't get good sleep. You're too hot in the bed. Something's going to happen, either nerves or otherwise, that you're not going to get the best sleep the night before the exam. So don't just count on that. Try to get good sleep the week or so before, at least 3 or 4 days before the exam. The other thing you can do is to hydrate, keep your body hydrated. And also, I minimize caffeine. I kind of get into the cycle of stimulation with caffeine, and I can get kind of dependent on it very easily. So I kind of cut it out for the last week or two before the exam so that when I do drink caffeine, which I did on the day of the exam, it's like it actually works well. And I'm not just kind of trying to get out of a crash. I'm kind of at a baseline and then I go up to kind of a elevated level of energy. So I personally recommend minimizing caffeine. So for your body, again, sleep, hydration, minimize caffeine, and anything else that you know your body needs before the exam because you will need it for the exam. Step number 12. Exam day has come. You wake up, it's exam day. What do you do now? I recommend you arrive very early to the site. If your exam starts at 8, try to get there at 7, at least 7:15. You don't know what's going to be the deal with traffic, with parking, with finding the building, and all of these different things. Get there at least an hour before, minimum 30 minutes before. And just kind of going through the day, just kind of visualizing it. You will drive up, you'll get to the test site. You will then park your car, you'll walk into the test site. Mine was up like maybe 3 or 4 stories in a like mid-rise building. So I had to go to the elevator. Actually, the door was locked that day. I took it on a Saturday and the door was actually locked. And that I panicked a little bit and I realized there's a little buzzer here that I had to buzz and it had a little note saying people taking the test, buzz this button. So things like that, just be careful. So you get to the test site, you walk in, you'll see somebody at the front desk, they'll check you in, they'll take your ID, you'll take a picture, you'll do some fingerprint scanning. Then all of that takes about 15 minutes or so. Then you will get a locker, you'll put your stuff in a locker. You will then be asked to, if you're ready to start the exam. If you are ready, you've used the restroom, you've gotten yourself ready, you've gotten all you got your calculator in your hand, your backup calculator in the locker. You then go up to the entrance to the testing center, which is like an enclosed room that is monitored through a glass. You then get patted down, like going through border control or a high security prison. They'll pat you down. They'll make sure that there's nothing in your jackets. There's nothing in your shoes. If you have a hat, I don't even know if they'll let you keep the hat. They'll make you put your glasses on the table and they put it on this little thing that spins it around to make sure there's no, like, I don't know, these Google glasses or things like that now people have. So you'll go through that. Once you're cleared, they'll give you a few sheets of laminated paper with a couple markers. This is going to be your scrap paper to do equations and things like that on. You'll then walk into the exam room. You'll have a computer assigned. You'll sit down. They'll log you in. It'll be you now in this quiet room looking at a single screen with a mouse and a keyboard. You will then be given about a 10-minute tutorial on how to access the NCEES reference manual or reference handbook on your computer. You'll be taught how to use the controls of the exam. You will then click start on the exam. Once you click start, you will then go to the first question. You'll see at the top, 8 hours starts ticking down and you're in the exam. You will get a batch of 40 questions for session number 1. Like I mentioned before, there's a 4-hour session. Then there's a 50-minute break where you have lunch. Please bring your own lunch. Don't try to go out and then you get caught up in lines and traffic. Bring your own lunch. Then you have another 4-hour session with another 40 questions, and then you end the exam. So you'll be given going back to the first session, you'll be given a batch of 40 questions. These questions you'll have to do in that first session, and just remember you will not be able to go back to these questions. These questions are locked in as your first session. You cannot then think, okay, I'm just gonna like put it for now and go back to it. No, these questions, once you end that first session, they're gone. So you go through the 40 questions, and I'll talk about the 3-pass method in a second, which is my recommended exam strategy. You Finish those 40 questions, you hit submit. You then go on your break, you get 50 minutes. I think you can even get, like, if you don't need all the 50 minutes, you can go back in early. I recommend just getting something to eat, drink, use the restroom, get yourself reoriented, rest your eyes. Like, don't leave the test site. My recommendation is not to leave the test site. Go to the hallway or something like that and just come right back. You don't know what can happen in that time. You take your break, you go back in, same thing, get patted down before you enter the test room, go back to the same computer. You'll be given your new scrap pieces of paper that are laminated with the markers. You go back down, you sit, then you take the next 40 questions. Go through those 40 questions. Again, you don't get access to the original questions. You finish them, you submit it again, the exam is done. You'll be relieved. Your eyes will probably hurt. I have astigmatism, so I'm not good with light, and they don't have like the night mode, or they don't have black background. It's just all white, blue light in your face. So my eyes always hurt after these exams. You'll be tired. You'll be from sitting in a chair for 9 hours straight, no standing desks or anything like that. You'll be relieved though, and you'll be happy that you did it. Even if you don't know if you passed or not, you're at least happy you went, you committed, you finished it, and you did the whole process. You'll then leave the testing center, you'll do the checkout and all that stuff, and then you'll go home. That is essentially how the exam looks like. I think NCEES actually on their website has like a walkthrough, like a video, point of view video of like, oh, this is what you're going to do when you get into the exam. This is what it's going to look like. So you can check I think their YouTube channel or online will show you what happens, and you can visualize it as it would be on the day of the exam. With all of that I mentioned, in terms of exam day prep, wear comfortable clothes, get there early as I mentioned, and don't overdo it with caffeine and hydration. There's not any, I don't think there's any scheduled or unscheduled bathroom breaks. So you get that 50-minute break. I don't know what happens if you have to use the restroom in the middle of the actual exam. If the exam stops or the time keeps going, you can check that on the NCEES website, but I just recommend you don't want to break your flow and things like that. So minimize the drinking and the hydration as much as possible, just what you need to get you through those sessions. Moving on to step number 13. Use the 3-pass strategy during the exam. I won't go into too much depth into the 3-pass strategy because it's pretty straightforward. And I also have a blog post on it on noonfireblog.com. Essentially what it is you go through the exam in 3 passes. Meaning you look at every single question in 3 passes. Pass number 1, you go through and you click through. You only answer questions that are very easy, no lookup, usually qualitative questions that you just can know off the top of your head. Answer those, knock those out. Pass number 2, and then what I should say is you skip all of those that are not those. You skip all questions that are not easy, qualitative questions. In pass number 2, you go back through and you answer questions that are easy, that you are familiar with, but they're going to require some lookup in the NCEES reference handbook or some kind of 2-step or 3-step or 4-step calculations, but you know what to do, and you know you just kind of have to go through the process, and you've done it before and you're familiar. Do those in pass number 2. Pass number 3, do those questions that are harder or that you really don't know how to approach it. And take your time with those now, because you know that you've gotten all of the ones that are easy, low-hanging fruit out of the way. You'll find that you'll probably get through a good amount of the questions in very, very short amount of time, and you'll have a lot of time to do the past 3 harder questions that either take longer or you're not as familiar with. You can spend the time looking for it. I personally, in high school and college, one of the biggest issues I had was time management in exams. I would always run out of time in exams. My GPA even reflected that. If I learned this before, I think I would have done much better in terms of my grades and exam scores. But since I've used this, I've figured this out as soon as I graduated, actually, when I started doing all these certification exams, PE, FE, LEAD, CFPS, and things like that. And since then, I've never run out of time on any of those exams using this method. So I would recommend that you use this method. Again, you can check out more details on the blog post. The other thing I'll mention on the 3-pass method is that for this particular exam, you don't need to go through every single question, like click through it linearly. You can actually use the tools for each pass. You can actually use the tools on the exam, such as flagging and using that summary page at the end. So you'll actually go through the 40 questions on your first pass. And what I recommend doing, what I did, is that I would either answer it, because I knew it's a pass 1 type question, easy, no lookup. I would either answer it. If it was not a pass 1 type question and it was a pass 2 question, and I knew that it was something I'm familiar with, I just have to look it up, do the equations, I would put the flag on it. Like there's a button to flag it, but I would leave it unanswered. Then I would skip it. If I go to the next one and it's a pass 2 question, same thing, flag it. If I go to the next question and it's a pass 3 type question, meaning very difficult, or something that requires a lot of lookup calculations, or I just don't know, I would not flag it and I would not answer it. Then at the end of your pass 1, you would have gotten to the end of the 40 questions for that session. There's like a summary page. Once you get to question 40, you can click on the summary page. You'll see all in front of you on one sheet the status of each question. Either it's going to be answered, or it's going to be unanswered, or it's going to be flagged, or it's going to be unanswered and flagged. So I would then go back, and using that summary sheet, you can actually navigate to each question from the summary sheet. I would then go straight to the flagged unanswered questions, because I knew I already went through it and determined it and marked it as a pass 2 question. So I would then do my pass 2 by clicking every unanswered flagged question. After I do all of those questions, then I know every question that's now unanswered is a pass 3 question. And I would then go and take my time and finish those. Now, step number 14, the hardest step of them all, is to wait for the exam results. This, many people, including myself, I agree, have said that waiting for the results is probably the hardest part of the entire process and the entire test-taking process. It's very nerve-wracking. You have anxiety. You just don't really know. Even if you feel like you've passed, which I did for both the mechanical HVAC and the fire protection PE exam, I left it. I'm like, I passed it. Like, I feel like I passed it, but still, you don't know for sure, and that is what just eats at you for the next however many days. To ease that a little bit, there's kind of I would say, informal observation that I've noticed, and I've seen posts on Reddit that people notice as well, is that NCEES typically releases scores the Wednesday after you take that exam, the week after. So if you took that exam on this week here, the next week, that Wednesday, typically they'll release your score. So don't quote me on that, and don't come after me if it doesn't happen. But typically that is what I've seen. And I've taken 3 NCEES exams. It's been the case for all of them. And again, I went on Reddit and things like that, and I saw people saying the exact same thing. And it typically comes in the morning time, Eastern time in the US. So Wednesday morning or so, you should look out for your results. Again, I'm recording this in 2025. Maybe next year they're going to change that. But the way that I've seen for all of my exams thus far, that next Wednesday in the morning Eastern time is when they typically release results. So look out at that time. Moving on to step 15. Now that you have waited, you've checked your score, you open up NCEES and you see a little green tick mark saying passed. Hopefully that's the case, and I'm rooting for you for that to be the case. Once you get to that point, celebrate, thank those around you, and just relax a little bit and kind of take a load off for a week or two, take a little mental break, and be very grateful that you will never have to go through this again. This is not an exam you have to take again in 10 years or something like that. Once you pass this exam, that's it. It's etched in stone for the rest of your career, and you've now moved past arguably the biggest milestone in the career of a professional engineer, and within the career of an engineer in general, which is passing the PE exam, which is usually the last step, but sometimes it's the intermediate step to becoming a licensed PE. So I congratulate you, and go and celebrate however you celebrate, and whatever you want to do, you deserve it, and I'm happy for that as well. However, once you do pass, the next thing is to actually look forward. Don't just think that this is the end of your career. It's just like this goal that you, like, for example, you just graduated college or something like that. Now you're done with college. Instead, this exam is now, you could argue, the beginning of your career. You now have put yourself in a position to open up a field of opportunities, of types of positions that you can do, types of roles you can do, types of projects you can work on, even starting your own business down the line. You've now become a licensed professional engineer once you do the rest of the steps. For me in Maryland, actually, what happens is as soon as I took the exam and passed it, the next day I got an email from Maryland board. The next day or the day after or so, I got an email from Maryland board saying that you are now a professional engineer. Here's your license. I didn't have to contact them. I didn't have to do anything. As soon as NCEES released those results and they got automatically uploaded to Maryland board, I already did all the paperwork to even be able to sit for the exam. It was just a matter of, once I get this pass mark, I get my license. So I got my number and I got everything, and I was then licensed in the state of Maryland. Many states are the same, some are different. Some, it's just an intermediate step and you then have to do some other follow-up. So check your local board or your country's board or your state board to figure out what the process is. But don't just leave it at, oh, I passed the exam. Follow up, see what's the next thing I need to do to make sure I get my license in my hand, and don't stop until you get a license and a number in your hand. Once you are licensed, look forward. Start looking for promotions. Start looking for what can you now do and aim for and aspire for in your own company, maybe even in another company if you see that there's higher pay, or you can say a higher quality company that you want to work for. Maybe you were at a very small kind of mom and pop consulting firm. Maybe you now want to work for a more international or more national firm. You can now start to look and reach beyond where you were before just from passing this exam and getting this license. The other thing to do is to thank those who helped you along the journey, whether it was people in your professional world, whether it was people in your personal world. I personally thank my wife, my parents. Start discussions with your employer about raise in compensation, responsibilities. However, don't move too fast. Really, the first thing, and one of the things you should do, is look at the roles, responsibilities, and ethics of a professional engineer. This is something that you now, with this title, you are held to a higher level of standard in your work, in your rigor, in your ethics, and in your integrity. So this is something that you should take seriously. This is not just a piece of paper for you to just put in front of your boss, hey, I want a 10% raise. No, it's something you now should treat it as an identity, that this is someone I have become and I want to live up to that role. And I want to aspire to be somebody who is an asset to society. You can look actually at your state board's website. They should have documentation on ethics and things like that for your specific state and the state you're licensed in. In addition, look at their renewal process. Typically, they're every 2 years or so that you will have to renew it. So make sure you understand what you would have to do. It's not just like you get the license and it's a perpetual license. It has to be renewed every couple of years or so. And there's just a process of some paperwork, paying a renewal fee, and doing some continuing education. But make sure you do know that and that you schedule it in a calendar with automatic reminders and things like that, because it can sneak up on you and you don't want to miss the deadline. And you also don't want to try to cram all these continuing education credits in the last 12 hours or so before your expiration date. So make sure you know it ahead of time, you put it in your calendar and you plan for it and you know the process to do so, because if you miss it as well, there are also some fees and penalties that can occur if you don't renew it on time. The last thing I'll leave you with is, once you become a professional engineer, remember to stay humble. I think this is one of the pieces of advice that I think is most important. And if it was acted upon, that person will have a very prosperous career. To stay humble. You don't have to now kind of put on a front and like a facade of being this kind of big shot expertise, big shot expert in all these different domains, and now trying to speak that you in a way that you know everything now that you've passed this exam. If you ask any seasoned professional engineer, they will always say that they do not have all the answers, especially in sub areas outside of their domain. Number two, they are learning something new every single day within their domain or outside of their domain. And that they are, three, never afraid to ask questions or say, I don't know something right now, but I will find that answer. The famous quote from the Pursuit of Happiness movie with Will Smith. I'm not a guy who's going to, if I don't know something, try to pretend, or however that quote goes. If I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know, but I'm going to go find it. This is a mindset that I believe if an engineer has it, they will be very successful. One, they will actually learn, because you can't learn when you pretend to know things. And two, their level of humility and being down to earth will attract people around them, and they will then actually see them as proper leaders, and they will want and be rooting for them to excel in their career and open up opportunities and try to help you in those opportunities. So the last advice after this long video, after you've become a professional engineer, is to stay humble. So this is it. This is my experience. Thank you for sticking with us and sticking with me. And if you found this beneficial, check out my other videos, check out my website, noonfireblog.com, subscribe and share to anybody who is thinking about taking this exam, and if you find this would be beneficial for them. Thank you very much.